Welcome, and thanks for joining us for SAP's series on Intelligent CX. Really excited about this series. We did 2 yesterday. Obviously, we're about to kick this off, which will be available on demand afterwards. And tomorrow we have a great session available as well. Make sure to check it out if you're interested. So I'm very excited to have our guest with us today. Before we introduce him, let's talk a minute about what Intelligent CX is. So for us, when we look at CX, we look at any experience a brand has to really touch their end consumer or their customer in general. And a lot of the times that C in CX can be any number of audiences. Often within a sales organization, that customer actually is our sales organization. So how do we empower them to succeed and make a great experience with the buyer to ultimately drive revenue faster? So without further ado, I'm very pleased to have Alicia Orear. I think I got that right. I've been practicing all morning.
You did.
And Tony Kavadas, excellent, from Mediafly, to join us today to have a great conversation about really what is intelligent sales enablement, how are organizations better empowering their sellers to connect with their buyers. So Alicia, why don't I turn it over to you for a brief introduction about what you do at Moen?
Sure. Thanks, Grant. I'm happy to be here. Hi, everyone. I'm Alicia Orear. I'm a senior marketing content engagement manager on the Moen commercialization team. And we are part of a brand execution center of excellence, which rolls up into our global brand development area. And if that's confusing, I'll shorten that. Just think marketing and generally marketing associated with new product launches. And one of my team's primary responsibilities is creating those new product launch materials. They can be both internal facing and external facing. So things like sell sheets, PowerPoints, training modules. Another one of our primary responsibilities is managing the way that those materials are shared. And that's where Mediafly comes in.
Excellent. And for an organization as large as yours, I know it's not an easy task. So very much looking forward to hearing you speak. And thank you so much for joining us. And Tony, Mediafly has been a long-time partner, so very excited to have you as well. Why don't you say hello and tell us a little bit about what you do at Mediafly?
Absolutely. Thank you, Grant. And Alicia, thanks for joining us this afternoon. My name is Tony Kavadas. I'm the Chief Sales Officer of Mediafly. Mediafly is an endorsed app, so it's an SAP endorsed app. And just a little bit about us, we're a revenue enablement company. And what that really means is that we allow the reps to engage with their customers in an interactive, dynamic content means that marketing provides. And what that does is it gives us a great brand experience, it enables sellers to perform better, and it really helps everyone sell more, which is why we're here. So again, thank you.
I'm looking forward to it. And it's one of those things that, COVID really exacerbated it, but more and more organizations, specifically sales organizations, really need to become more intelligent with how they engage. And it's because, we've seen massive macroeconomic disruption. We're seeing generational shifts where both buyers and sellers have a greater expectation of experience. We're seeing all these forces combined to really up the ante, and it really increases sales pressure. So how do you make that experience as smooth as possible, leaving a lasting impression that continues to foster growth and continued revenue from buyers? So with that, why don't I turn it over to you, Tony, and we'll drive the conversation and see where it goes.
Excellent. Thank you, Grant. So Alicia, we met back in 2021, early 2021, and you've been very busy since then. You've been promoted, you got your MBA, you rolled out a sales enablement platform with all that change management and so forth. So I'm anxious to catch up and see how things are going. Can we start, just share a little bit about Moen, from your perspective with the audience?
Sure. So if those on this call are not familiar with Moen, Moen is a kitchen and bath faucet company, and we've been around for a while, so over 75 years. And our reason for being, our brand purpose, is transforming and creating a meaningful difference in consumers' personal experiences with water. And Moen is part of Fortune Brands Innovations, Inc., or FBIN for short. And we do have a sister brand as part of the water business called House of Roll. House of Roll is made up of different sub-brands, so Riabel, Roll, Shaw Sinks, etc. And then Fortune Brands also has an outdoors and security business as well.
Excellent. So definitely a very large organization, very old organization with number one brands that we all use every day. So that's great. Thank you. I know that when we originally started talking back in 2021, Moen was preparing for a large product launch. Can you share a little bit about that project, the goals, and really, how it became a launching pad for intelligent sales?
Sure. So we were coming from a place of very antiquated technology in 2021. So, we started with the recognition that we needed something more sophisticated to house, these materials, our product training materials that we call them. But our biggest overarching goal in looking for a platform was this desire to create a one-stop shop for our sellers. So we, of course, want our sellers to spend their time selling, not looking across different platforms, websites, programs for the materials that they need to do their jobs. So that single source of truth, that platform that was going to make these materials easily shareable, easily accessible, and then also searching for a platform that worked with some of our existing programs within our tech stack. So not necessarily to replace some of our more well-loved platforms, like SAP, like Lessonly, our learning management system, but looking for a program partner that could work alongside them.
So the single source of truth you mentioned, do you have any idea? I mean, it could be a rough estimate, how many sources there were, to distribute or find content as a seller?
There's a lot. Okay. Digitally, paper copies, I imagine, that live in someone's drawer somewhere. We think about all the materials that someone has downloaded to their desktop. Organizationally, we are dealing with a ton of different sources of material.
Yeah, that one really, hits home for me, as someone in sales that is a user of content all the time, right? I don't want to have to look all over for it. And I don't want my team to have to look all over and save things locally and things like that. So definitely, a hot button for me. Alicia, what were some of the challenges you faced during this project, and how did you and the team overcome them?
Hey, Tony, I think you lost me for a second, but I'm back.
Yeah, no problem. Great to have you back. I was asking, during your project, like, what were some of the challenges you and the team faced, and how are you guys able to overcome them?
Oh my gosh, all right, the issues are piling up here, one after the other, right? It wouldn't be technology without challenges, like the office light just turning off while I'm sitting in here. So everyone on the call, I apologize for any other hiccups that we might have. But certainly we had many challenges, not only with the platform journey, the platform search, but across implementation and kind of this continued advocacy piece. So I would say the first challenge is that Moen is a large organization. So we've got multiple stakeholders across marketing. So you think product and channel marketing, brand execution, which is the area that I work in, sales ops, sales enablement, IT. So getting everyone on board with rolling out a new platform can be a huge endeavor. So we overcame that by trying to gather that feedback and those perspectives ahead of time, making sure that we were accounting for the different needs across all of our business units. And we continue that practice today. And then again, being a large, complicated organization, we have sellers that are tasked with selling both Moen and House of Roll, and they need access to both brands' materials. So in that case, really relying on the shared platforms, the shared technology that we use to help build those synergies. And then another one I would say would be brand consistency. And working on the brand side, on the marketing side, I've seen some things that have given me hives in terms of self-created materials, and had to play a little bit of the brand police role. But I think that is not uncommon, and it's not unusual. It makes sense if you're not providing your sellers with the materials that they need, or they're not able to find them, they're going to create it on their own. So it's a lofty goal, I think, for 100% upholding of brand standards. And we've started to slowly chip away at that. So providing things like approved PowerPoint templates, easy access to our logos, consistent messaging across all of our materials, and then giving access to that messaging. All of those touch points are helping us reach that goal of kind of ensuring that our brand essence is communicated consistently across all of our different channels with all of our different customers.
So that's you brought up a couple things I just want to emphasize. So you brought up the large organization, lots of stakeholders, which leads into change management and really early and often, if I could say that, meaning you brought them in early in the process.
Yes.
And throughout, kind of bring everyone on the same page, so it wasn't a shock at the end. Yeah. And it's great to hear that you continue to do that, since these platforms are living and breathing, and so is the business, and it's got to evolve. You mentioned brand compliance, and that one kind of hits home as well. We're getting ready to release some research. And one of the things that we found, the number one challenge that manufacturing companies have with regards to content management is brand compliance. And, how do we make sure that, when Tony goes out with an old presentation and I'm using an old logo and, I'm not using all the right things. And it sounds like you guys are well on the way to solving that problem for Moen.
We are trying, yes.
Excellent.
Another challenge that I'll mention is change management in general. Change is hard. I think change is especially hard for sellers, some of our more veteran sellers. So, I mentioned kind of that buy-in across all of our different business units, stakeholders. That was essential in rolling out a new platform like Mediafly. Another thing that we did that was helpful was that we rolled out Mediafly to a small group of sales users before our initial launch, and kind of tested and learned with them, and then got their buy-in, and they became our kind of reference group for testimonials and positive feedback, and kind of caught on after that. In order to kind of keep... Okay, go ahead, Tony.
no, I like what you said there, though, is that you started with a pilot group, and it sounds like you got early buy-in, and you also mentioned that salespeople can be finicky users of technology, which I might resemble that comment in a big way. But that's an interesting lesson learned, and something that I want to make sure I take to other customer meetings.
Yes. With change management, I would say another key piece of that is through these relationships, these partnerships, my team works very closely with our sales enablement team and our sales operations team. So they're kind of our more direct line to our selling team. So relying on them for feedback, best practices, really helped with the implementation process, as well as kind of continued user adoption, usage, engagement. There's a few other tactics that we use, in order to drive user adoption, user engagement. One of them is we host periodic training with our sales users, and we usually have a different topic that we're trying to cover, but we kind of had a progressive rollout where we started with more basic capabilities. This is what the platform does. This is what you can find on it. This is how you can share it. And then we've slowly rolled out additional features. So we gave our sellers a little bit of time to acclimate to this new program. We host contests. So we have a contest running currently. We rolled out a new Mediafly feature last month called Copilot, which, if you're not familiar with it, it allows users to present content from the Mediafly platform while recording a video, and then that becomes a shareable piece of content. So we have a contest for our sales users where they can win cash money for testing out this feature and then submitting their own Copilot video. And then once it ends, we have a panel of judges that will kind of loosely assign what is the best video that was submitted.
That's great. Contests, cash, all those things are great for competitive salespeople. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Excellent. Any other lessons learned that you want to share?
I think, again, with change management, with adoption and implementation, I had mentioned this in one of my earlier answers, but relying on those platform synergies, again, one-stop shop. So for us, it was very important that our content management system integrated with our CRM system, which is SAP C4C on the Moen side. But then also integrated, again, with some of our existing programs. So our digital asset management system, which is Widen, which I think they recently changed their name. Lessonly, our learning management system. So really important that we were working towards giving our sellers just one place to go to access everything that they need.
Yeah, that's something that maybe you remember back to 2021 that, one of my key tenets, and, as someone who's been in sales management for the last 30 years, this notion of putting 5-6 apps on a salesperson's desktop and expecting them to be more productive is a challenging one. And I think that, integrated user experience that you're getting right. So SAP Sales Cloud C4C is your CRM, and that's, kind of like the sales operating system, and being able to have content there that flows through from your DAM to Mediafly to SAP is great. We've seen a lot of customers not only drive adoption of both technologies, but it helps them get to the ROI that, the reason why you did the project in the first place.
Yes.
I do want something else that just came up, and Grant mentioned it earlier, but he mentioned that today's selling environment is very different. And, one of the concepts, and I know you guys take advantage of this as well with Mediafly, but is just, leveraging the interactive content. And, we call it kind of the consumer experience, so that it's more like, when you're going around looking for content or we're serving it up, it's more like Netflix versus, a more complex system and so forth. And that also helps drive adoption. And I love what you guys have done with that. Grant, do you want to add anything when it comes to, SAP or the user experience that we're just chatting about?
Well, I think you said it really well with Netflix, and it's this too. It's the iPhone or the smartphone experience, and it was the beginning of the end, and it's really changed how we look at sales systems. Sales systems largely for organizations have shifted from a system of record to a system that actually needs to spur productivity. It's not a system we sit in and manually input data. It's a system we expect to get information from, insights, recommendations, or in this case, intelligent content that helps take and progress the sales cycle. Now, it was funny when the light flipped off, and I'll tell you why. And this goes back to the conversation around how we get organizations to adopt technology. And the light, in theory, is very intelligent, right? If there's not enough movement in the office, it turns off the light to save the company some money. But in practicality, sometimes, in this case, it fights against you. So it's how do we actually take intelligent technology and embed it in a way that helps our sellers be more productive and not get in their way. One way we do that is pulling everything into one cohesive user experience, a one-stop shop, a one iPhone, if you will. By unifying that experience, you have them in one place. And just like the example of how you're promoting and incentivizing them to try new features out, right? You give them an opportunity to try it out and work it into their lives instead of trying to force it upon them. We all work differently. We all have different strengths. By giving an organization, a sales organization specifically, this amount of flexibility, they start to see how it improves their day-to-day. This is what we really focus on at SAP, giving sellers the opportunity to improve their workload with these features and functionality, but it's not necessarily mandatory. It's not going through that, click flow that we all know from, 2000s era, where it's mandatory field needs to be filled in. Oh, you forgot a comma here. All those little things that slow down productivity and really turn a seller off to technology, we've done away with, and it's really focused on user experience and unification. So I think all that color basically just says you're doing it right. This is what your sellers downstream or distributors definitely are looking for.
Yeah, I love the real-time light bulb analogy that we experienced a few minutes ago. And you're absolutely right. Like, making it simple like that means the seller is going to use it, and if they adopt the technology, you're going to get the benefits and value that we all expect. That's awesome. So, one place I would go next is, with regards to sales, there's always, room for improvement, right? We always consistently measure, we inspect, we fine tune it. Alicia, could you talk a little bit about analytics and the role it plays here as well?
Yeah, and you guys have made me completely paranoid with the light bulb analogy, and I'm just waiting for it to go off again, and then I'll have to perform some crazy dance move to turn it back on. So I'm ready.
Great.
Data and analytics, often overwhelming, but ultimately your friend. And Tony, as you mentioned, can go a long way in recognizing opportunities, helping to improve that user experience. So on our side, we collect both quantitative and qualitative data. So we get a ton of quantitative data flowing from our Mediafly platform. And our platform hasn't been live too long. We're about 1.5 years in. So transparently, I think we are still trying to understand how to use some of the reporting that we get. Some of it has been very useful recently. I'll give the example of a search history report that allows us to see what our users are searching for, what are the commonly used keywords. And there's a couple different ways we've been able to use that. The first one is ensuring that we're tagging our assets correctly. So the idea of metadata improvement. And the second is, what are they looking for and they can't find? So it's also been a great way for us to identify content gaps. So a more specific example, warranty continues to come up as something that's searched often in Mediafly. And we didn't have any pieces specific to our warranty policy. So those are currently in development. So that's been a great use of some of the analytics that are coming out of Mediafly. More on the qualitative side, our partnerships with sales enablement, sales ops have been a great way to collect user feedback. So kind of establishing those open lines of communication with our selling team, which that makes up a big portion of our user group. We also have a dedicated inbox where users can submit platform feedback, content feedback. So kind of through the launch of this platform, really enabled us to have these great conversations that can lead to a better user experience and better content as well.
Yeah, thank you for that. And your comment about, all the data and things like that. If I date myself even more, in the old days, we would produce, marketing would produce content. Sales would be requesting that. They'd go out and use it or not use it. And, we really wouldn't know. We'd have that conversation again, and marketing would be saying, how was that content? Was it useful? And the salespeople would just give some kind of anecdotal information back. And one of the things that Alicia and I talked about before was the fact that we track, who's looking at the content, who's presenting it. We also even, update some things into Sales Cloud automatically for the rep, which drives all this great data that marketing gets about the content. And as Alicia just mentioned, using it for gap analysis and, where we need to add content and what sellers are looking for. So that's really, really great. Grant, do you want to flip it back to you here?
Well, so data is only as good as what you have in the system, but it's all about surfacing it. So when I think back to, the first touch on, what are those reports that are, what are the reports providing the end user? What insights are they giving you on the quality of your engagement material? Surfacing the right insights from technology, if we take a real big step back, is really the critical piece here. And once again, it comes back to sort of the idea that technology needs to be working for you and helping your business. And I know that's sort of a higher level view than what we were just talking about. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's technology delivering value for the user, because that might be a seller, that might be a sales manager, it might be someone in a content role that is trying to connect the dots and address, from this sales journey, do we have gaps? Are there pieces of that pipeline funnel that we see major drop off? How do we true that up so our prospective opportunities move from pipeline forecast all the way to a close? So all these insights empower the business to engage with the end customer better, and that's what we mean with intelligent CX.
Absolutely. Right.
Perfect. So this has been a solid conversation, and I guess before we hop and we take some audience questions, maybe we can open it up, because we circled around a few different pieces of technology here and how it impacts the organization or the end consumers. So Alicia, if, obviously this has been a pretty large transformation that's taken some time, iterative, with starting small, growing, expanding. If you had some advice you wanted to share, either about the process or the technology or pitfalls, anything come to mind?
Yes, definitely. And I continue to tout this idea of partnerships. So I'm going to say, find your posse, kind of your ride or die folks that are going to support you along your journey. So subject matter experts across the different business units, whether they're, and it could be internal, it could be external. And, I want to continue to highlight the fact that the rollout of this platform, the continued maintenance and advocacy of the Mediafly platform, for us is a team of folks that work very hard on this. So I am blessed to have those folks within our inner circle. They're very dedicated and passionate. And, it's surprising how those open lines of communication across some of these areas like IT, sales ops, sales enablement, and marketing, those relationships sometimes don't happen naturally within our current work structures. But an initiative like this has really opened those lines of communication, and we've been able to use these relationships in other ways, so beyond Mediafly. So for me, I think that's been the most critical piece of this platform's success.
Excellent. And I guess I have a follow-up question. So, and this is really true in my past, especially when it comes to sales content or marketing content. Sometimes when you solve the problem of helping people find what they're looking for, it has a lot of residual benefits. The easy example I'm thinking of, a whole lot less emails and sometimes text messages. I mean, have you seen this from sort of connected departments where they're like, "Oh, thank you so much for doing this"? I always like to ask, because it's one of those things that, when your inbox has 20 less emails to deal with, it just makes some days so much more manageable.
That's a great point, Grant. And yes, we have definitely seen that. And I think in our organization, again, because we're so large and our selling team doesn't know who to reach out to, so a email can start with me and then I have to forward it on to different folks and the chain continues. So it's not just one email looking for that information. It results in many, many emails. So I think especially on our channel marketing side, that's the group that is most often tapped into for sales materials. Having a place for them to source their available content has really lessened their email workload, I will say.
And even if it's just an extra cup of coffee at the end of the day, it really has dramatic effects, because you move away from the mundane and you elevate the meaningful. And it really has organizational benefits beyond, the end consumer who's using it. It's everyone in the ecosystem. And we see that a lot with CX transformation, because all of these things are a cog in the wheel. And I guess, Tony, I better open this up to you as well. And before I do, we have a couple questions that have come in right after this. We'll do a few questions from the audience. If you have some, go ahead and put them in now. But Tony, same question to you. Obviously, you've worked with tons of folks. Each transformation or each project is very specific. Any things that you think that if they had to know one or two things, what would be the top?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to go to two things. One is, I just want to say, Alicia, thanks for sharing that about, leveraging technology, going to bridge the gap across multiple departments and bring that together. Having that come together, drives the success for the organization, drives better relationships, and people are kind of marching in the same direction and alignment. I think that's really great to hear. And secondly, I'll think more outward facing, like with customers and so forth. And, today, I think, as Grant alluded to, like, the buyers have changed, the sellers have changed, the market's changed. But our estimates say that buyers really only spend, 5, maybe 10% of their time in front of suppliers and sellers. And so at that point, the content that, that Alicia's team, other content people are creating, it has to stand up when the seller's not in the room, right? And so it, goes back to, when the sellers are out researching, when they might be gaining internal consensus, making decisions, you have to have that content there for them, right? To help them make those decisions the right way. So I don't know, I would just encourage people, as you go to your next meeting, think about what you're doing to help optimize that other 90%, if you will, right? When your sellers are not in the room. So that's what I would leave everyone with, Grant.
Excellent point. And let's be honest here, modern B2B sellers get less shots. We've all been inundated with digital noise, whether it's our smartphones or emails, or, it's just constant digital bombardment. And so the days of having, being able to pick up the phone and reach success, or shoot an email and reach success, are significantly less than what they used to be. So when you do have that shot, you want to make sure that you have the right message for your prospect, and are able to deliver it in a fashion that resonates. So I 100% agree. So with that said, why don't we jump? We have a couple questions that we'll tackle, and then as we wrap up, we'll do, looking at the time, let's do 3 questions. And then I want to circle back around and ask one more time if, based on those questions, there's any other, final thoughts. So why don't we jump right into it? So Alicia, this is really for you, and Tony, you feel free to chime in after it, but it's really, you've gone on a in an enablement journey, I guess is the correct way to say it. And the question is, what is the next step? Where do you see it going from here?
Okay. I think two very different directions. The first one is that I think one of the next steps in our journey is going to be rolling out some of our more robust platforms across our outdoors and securities businesses. I think we're really just in the discovery phase of that, but I would say within the next 3 to 6 months, we'll be looking to roll out a platform like Mediafly to those businesses, which is very exciting. The second thing is this idea of continuous improvement. I think Tony mentioned it, that this is a living, breathing thing. This is not a one and done. So continuing to use that feedback that we get, roll out new features, improve existing features. That is going to be ongoing work for us.
Well, that makes sense, and it's a big undertaking. Sorry, go ahead, Tony.
Oh, no, and I was just going to say that, what we see, other customers doing on the journey is to continue, as Moen is doing, right, leveraging, more interactive, dynamic content. I love that you mentioned Copilot earlier. It's a neat way to, for your sellers to be, quote unquote, live in front of distributors or designers, even when they're not there, right? But in a nice virtual way, and then also know when they're engaging. And we see a lot of customers like Moen benefiting from that, and even more use of that type of technology.
So this actually feeds in perfectly with the next question. The next question is, can you share the impact you're seeing, from sellers? And we touched on that a little bit with Moen. I think we can hear a little more, but why don't we go in reverse? So Tony, I know you've worked with lots of folks. You probably have seen lots of different stuff. Why don't I have you open it up pretty high and then kick it back to Alicia for some of the more Moen examples?
Yeah, thank you, Grant. So impact on the sellers, and I think you mentioned, the changing seller. You kind of alluded to the fact that you've got people that are just coming out of school and people that are, more at the other end of the scale of experience, and finding, making it a easy experience for anyone to use the technology. We kind of liken it to like a weekend experience, right? So you mentioned the phone earlier. Think about like Netflix or something that you might Spotify that you use on the weekend, and being able to come into the office and easily be able to navigate your content, find it within Sales Cloud, navigate it, and go out and present, but do it in such a way that you don't have to do a lot of preparation and finding content, right? Because it's all in that single source that Alicia talked about, one of the big problems they're solving. And that not only helps them communicate their message when they're not there, but it also drives the adoption, which helps make this whole wheel turn, right?
And Alicia, any other impact from the sellers or quality feedback that you've received that we didn't already mention earlier?
Well, I mean, I think the overall impact has been very positive. We continue to receive kind of these anecdotal pieces of feedback from our selling users, and it has even come through in our organization-wide survey, which we call Pulse. We have heard that our sellers feel like they are being heard and that we're taking action on their feedback. Something that came up last week that I'd like to share is I was adding a new user to the platform, and she had responded back with the feedback that this was going to be life-changing for her. And that really made my morning. Like it just, to hear that positive feedback was very satisfying, and also makes me feel good about the work that we're doing.
I don't think you can ask for better feedback from a seller unless you hand them their commission check, right? So that is pretty awesome. I think we have just enough time for one more question. There's a few, and I'm going to go back to this one because for me, it was kind of my example of how fixing a process in my past dramatically reduced the amount of emails some of the key stakeholders in that original process, how much less noise there was so they could actually do the activities that brought value to the business. So the question is around unexpected benefits, but I'm going to go ahead and open that up a little bigger. From this, was there anything that was it truly unexpected that came out of it that had either a direct business benefit or just a working benefit? I know we touched on this a little bit, but anything else that comes to mind?
I'll take that one first. One thing that was surprising for me, especially because when we launched this journey for a more sophisticated, and we call Mediafly our sales enablement content management system, a nice short nickname for the program. We were coming at it with a very specific use case, which was a place to house our new product training materials. But those use cases continue to be identified, continue to grow. So I think I heard from our customer success manager recently an interesting piece of data, which is that I think we launched our platform with something like 570 pieces of content. And now a year and a half later, we're over 22,000 pieces of content that are available. So some of those priorities that I mentioned earlier, that single source of truth, that one-stop shop, just the types of content, the use cases just continue to swell. So that has been a very positive surprise.
Excellent. And Tony, is this kind of what you're seeing from other Mediafly customers?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely see it grow. And that's why when I hear someone say, hey, we want to test it out with this group and move forward, that that's going to be the key to success, right? Because they're going to see it work and then they're going to find more uses for it. And, the next product launch comes or you acquire another company and it's really easy to pull that all into the fold and make the rest of the team benefit from the same platform. Absolutely. The one other thing that I hear a lot from customers, and I visited a couple of other manufacturing customers last week, and they really said the same. They echoed the same thing, that they were surprised at how fast, right? So typically marketing starts this type of transformation, but they were surprised at how fast the other groups in the organization kind of jumped on board and just bringing that unification, as they go to market. And that's a really, really neat effect. And Alicia has mentioned it as well today.
Well said. And in many ways, I think it's like that meeting that gets canceled because it's no longer necessary. Everybody likes having added time back in their day. And when you make these processes easier on that end user and it actually adds true value, it can be really transformational for their day-to-day. And ultimately, when I'm on the technology side of customer experience, that's what gives me a lot of passion about it. So awesome. Well, we're right on time. Thank you both. This, I thought, was an amazing discussion, really quite insightful. Intelligent content engagement is a huge piece for organizations, that part of a much larger sales journey. And thank everyone for joining us. We have one more webinar in the Intelligent CX webinar series tomorrow, and it's all around really what I would say humanized AI. And I think in a few weeks-ish, we're going to be doing some more fun stuff around generative AI. And for me, and my passion around that is what it can do for your sales organization to, once again, give them back more time. So thank you all for attending. Really appreciate it. And have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.